Welcome back to New Realities. I am here with Kim Tang, one of my favorite guests and an incredible yoga teacher. But we're going to go beyond yoga today, in a sense, because there's so much wisdom you gain when you're practicing so intensely that I'm sure you're opening up to these levels. And it's not just about the body yoga, but it's about the deeper knowing of the self and, like the title says, how we serve. So, about that a little bit. What is like sort of the byproduct of this asana yoga that you're so amazingly adept at? So, yes.
Hi. Hi, Alan.
Hi, thanks
And
for back on the show. Appreciate you being here. Thank you.
yeah, for
And
sure.
yes,
And this one is
and it's
super
been
exciting.
fun. I mean, a lot of people, yes, no, I'm just saying a lot of people get a lot from these interviews that you've heard feedback from. So I'm happy to keep doing these. So, yes. So,
And
talk about the wisdom you're gaining. Yeah.
always I start with love and gratitude. So I want to thank you. There's something specific I want to thank you for. And that is that, you and I talk and we're like, okay, well, when do you want to do this? And we pick a date. And if it doesn't just, drop into the pocket and sink just right, then we're really flexible about redoing it. And so
Right.
thanks for that flexibility. Because today's topic came when it was supposed to come. I absolutely love the way that it presented itself to me. So the first thing I want to say is that the first time that we had an interview,
Mm-hmm.
one of the very first things that we did was we agreed to define yoga as a state of being. And what is so extraordinary is that while today's topic seems completely different and unrelated, it is a continuation of the same conversation. And so we talked about self-cultivation in yoga, and that you learn it on your mat to use it in your life. And this is really the same conversation in a more expanded form, and more expanded because we're talking about the unseen levels of being, which are the greater part of who you are. And I want to say that when, originally we talked about what we would talk about. And I threw out there chakra diagnostics, which is a conversation that I love to have. And we threw out there messages from the body, which is something that I live and swear and teach by. But I just wasn't settled with those as topics for this interview. And then I realized why that was. There was something else that was meant to be that came to me in the right moment. So that is where I want to begin.
Okay, great. I'm glad we have a beginning, a starting place. But no, I think it's an evolution and it's dropping in and it's feeling what the world needs now. In a way, this is how you serve, I would say. So, yes, I'm glad you're tapping into that. So, yeah, so talk about how this evolved and I'm really interested in because it takes so much practice to do what you're doing. And it's all about, in a way, the mind, because the mind needs to achieve what you're creating. But it's all of creation, in a sense, that you're tapping into. I think so. Well, tell me about the wisdom you've gained and how you serve. Okay.
Yeah, you just said the magic words. You reminded me that in our second interview, so I should say right now for the viewers who are just now joining, there are two interviews that precede this, and they're on yoga and consciousness. And in the second one, when we met last, we started talking about mind, but I kept saying beyond mind, beyond mind, beyond mind. And so there it is again, and that is where we are going today. And let me see. Okay, I better start taking notes. There's always a lot all at once. I told you that in my practice, I experienced something that I call self-cultivation leads to service. And when you do the work for yourself, then you can do it in service to others. So, you're familiar with those concepts that we can only give what we have and we can only receive what we can hold. And this is why that self-cultivation is one of the most important kind of self-empowerment, self-fortifying practices that we can do. It's not a selfish thing, it's the opposite. So I started to tell you that I think I started to tell you that while people come to me, they schedule private sessions with me because they think that they want to learn a very schmancy posture, like a dancer pose, or something like that, a full standing bow, something very deep and complex. And what happens is in that field that we share, they end up realizing frequently that what needs to happen is some talking and some communication and some kind of connecting on a spiritual level, in the form of what you might even call a spiritual consult. And those spiritual consults, as far as I'm concerned, tend to be far more important than a posture. Remember, I told you in the very beginning in session number 1 that it's not about the posture. The posture is the tool you use to get there and the indication that you have. And we started talking about everything that means. But at some point, and the body is the learning device for the mind, but at some point we're trying to get to all of our layers of being, right? The mind on the level of thoughts and beliefs, and then the feelings and emotions that are in response to the thoughts and beliefs, and then there's the form. So while people come to me for the points of form in asana, they come to me now on far deeper levels for like spiritual consult. So now this is what fed to today's topic, is that I have a student who was coming to me for asana. She was wanting to learn some very intricate postures. And as we came to know each other, and by the way, she listened to interview number 1 and interview number 2 in their entirety. As we got to know each other with her and with many other people, she started just asking me to be available on levels that have nothing to do with posture, just with kind of conversations of a deep nature, deep, intimate, personal, spiritual nature. And that definitely is how I serve, above and beyond just teaching, postures. But now there's this other thing that's happening, and this is a very, very timely conversation. So she schedules an appointment with me, and I think that it's probably for working some postures. And then she starts talking to me, and I'm feeling my way and realizing that this will be a conversation of a spiritual nature. But the way that this unfolded was extraordinary. And so at the end of it, I knew with all certainty that what had unfolded in my session with her was so deeply, deeply profound and meaningful, and that anyone and everyone who hears this can benefit from that situation in that
Well,
context.
can
And
you
so that's
talk about that instead of
definitely,
talking about the comments? Can you give us the substance here?
definitely. So I've known her for a couple of years, and she was kind of recounting her path of yoga. Mm-hmm. And she started talking about what I would call self-cultivation. She was going through some self-cultivation in the form of taking up a yoga practice, being on the journey of asana, and then through inspiration of her own practice, she became a teacher. And so she started talking about that as well. But she started talking about what she's going through right now, very currently in the world and the realm and the field that we share in this day and age. And she started talking about how she was really feeling actually kind of exhausted by what she was doing. And she was no longer feeling the same level of being energized or being inspired through, I'm going to call it just teaching yoga. And in conjunction with that, she was feeling that she needed some personal space for a deeper level of self-cultivation, what I would call spiritual study and self-study. So, some yamas and niyamas. So she's no longer fueled by just teaching postures, classes. She needs a little space for herself and what she wants to do with all of her space and time. It's like she's starving and craving kind of some nourishment on the soul level. And through the conversation, what I could tell with immaculate clarity is that she's ready to serve on a higher level. And so that was what our conversation was. And definitely I can be really specific and exact about these talking points, but I had to
Yes, too, because you want to talk about what it means to serve, right? And what it means to serve on any level, and what's if you're serving, how are there levels of serving? So yeah, go into all that would be really great. Thank you.
yeah, I'll try to definitely. So yeah, there are, I'm going to say that where we are right now in the realm of everything that we're in the realm of, there's obviously a lot of separateness and fear in the world, and what I would call dismantling of structures made in fear. And we've got a lot of Maya illusion going on about things like economic systems that we've agreed to, and then the values of a human being with respect to those economic systems. And we're right now we're just dismantling those structures that were created in fear. And I really feel like we're ready for that shift, and we're ready for the change in the world. And so this is what I perceive as the conversation I had with her, and that is that there's a world of people that are ready. They're ready to step up, not only on a personal level, but once they self-cultivate, then to reflect that to the world, to hold that space for the world and be the way shower. And so the conversation about exactly how to know when you're ready, and then how to do it, and how to gain confidence in
Well,
that.
tell me, how do you know when you're ready to serve, and how do you know what level you're going to serve? I mean, pretend we're conversation. Well, we're having that conversation. So I
Yeah,
want to
now
know the wisdom.
the first thing that absolutely positively needs to be said is that it's not going to look exactly alike for anyone, or for everyone. Everyone's process is uniquely their own, like their fingerprint. Everyone's circumstances line up uniquely according to what I would call the indication of what's active within them, and the way that they're navigating through free will, the lessons that they've taken on in their life. So I cannot tell you that there's a cookie cutter formula, but I can tell you that reflecting back, this is another, like everything we've talked about before is going to come in, to this and so much more. There was a time in one of our interviews when we started talking about authenticity, and you were saying, what does that mean, authenticity? How do you define it, or quantify or qualify or authenticity? And there's something else I want to contribute to authenticity, because this will be really important in the uniqueness through which everyone serves. So the other thing about humans, I think I told you that humans have a central nervous system that is literally in response to their thoughts. And so people can literally have a thought and have a reaction or a response to the thought, even though it hasn't happened and might never happen. Now, there's this other level of authenticity that is a way that I define authenticity that is unique to humans. And this is really important. This is another way that we can be more authentic to ourselves and to our truth. And by the way, this is a conversation that I feel like I've probably had 3 or 4 times in the past 2 weeks. So it feels like it's something that needs to be said. As humans, something else that makes us unique is that when we have a thought, and we have a feeling that's in response to the thought, and then we have a reaction to the feeling that we had. And here's what that might look like. Let's say, for example, that you either have a thought, or you're maybe called to action. You're in some kind of a situation where you feel a certain way about it. Maybe you feel judgmental, or maybe you feel angry, maybe you feel impatient, intolerant, something like that. That is the core feeling in the moment. That is the truth of the way that you felt in that moment. But then you have a reaction to that thought. I shouldn't feel that way. And then you guilt yourself, you shame yourself, you shut the truth of the feeling down in a way that you do not honor yourself for feeling that way, rather than honoring the way that you felt in its most authentic form, connecting to the truth, coming from love and feeling safe to say. Those are the big caveats of high frequency. Instead, you say, oh, I shouldn't feel that way. And now you've denied yourself the truth of how you feel. And that would be another level of lacking authenticity. So we
Wait,
can.
so let me understand that first. So authenticity is just being with the truth of how we feel without anything on top of that. I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel depressed. I mean, whatever that is the truth of what I feel, instead of like saying, oh, I'm not allowed to feel that. Then you're not being authentic, and you're not really serving yourself and others because you're hiding the truth. I think that's what you're talking about there, right?
Yeah, yeah. We judge ourselves for feeling the way that we feel. But remember that the emotions and the feelings actually are the truth. Now, that's a big conversation. But
I
remember,
agree. I agree.
that, that's
Emotions and feelings are the only true thing. Knowledge and facts, those are not really true. It's emotion that resonate with the reality of who we are.
yes, those emotions are in response to the facts, and those facts are based on the thought identification of who we think we are, and the judgments that we hold. So yeah, let's try not to get so off track just yet, because
No,
this.
no.
So it's
Okay. Yes.
when I told you that I wanted to have an interview that I call chakra diagnostics. I can now bring in like a snippet of that into this moment, because remember that our energy centers in the body, the chakras, are energy centers that house, I'm going to call it like qualities of being, and I'm not going to limit it to human being because our divinity as well. I think we talked a lot about being tethered between the core and the cosmos. And I think we
Yeah.
talked about when your chakras are wide open and free flowing, then you're exhibiting and expressing the higher aspects of those qualities of being. And if you look at something like the throat chakra, then it has to do with this type of communication that has a lot to do with what I'm calling authenticity, which is you have a feeling and you have enough connectedness and pure time presence to realize and recognize the feeling. So to connect to that as your truth. Most importantly, to come from love, not fear, and to feel safe to say, because by doing so, you're honoring not only yourself, but the person with whom you are in communication. What was this? There's something I want to remember. I used to always say honesty is, there's a relationship between honesty, trust, and intimacy. True trust is
Right.
the ability to be honest, and honesty is the deepest form of intimacy. Those things that are your truth that you're afraid to say, if you can love yourself enough to know that those are perhaps the most important things to be said for you to remain in your authenticity in your life. So, because what we're going to get to here is how can you do that for someone else if you're not doing it for yourself? So, and by the way, there can only be fear in dishonesty. So it's either fear that there's something to lose, fear that someone won't love you, something like that. So
But
there's,
before we go on to all those points, I'm just curious, how was it in the practice of the asanas that you came to these understandings about human nature and authenticity? Because you're really working the body. So how does that come to you?
I want to say two different parts, and I'm going to just make some notes to make sure I don't miss it. Okay, so in our first conversation, what we were talking about was asana and postures. And I think that I might have even told you a story, but if not, I'm just going to recap it pretty briefly. And that is that in the hot yoga lineage through which I originated, we use a mirror. And the mirror is not just to check your points of form. This, now we're getting into the subject. Here we go. So the mirror is not just to check that your shoulders are level and your hips and shoulders are square. It's actually for you to quite literally look straight into your own eyes without even blinking and just learn to stop all the judging and all the self-loathing and all the comparison for the sake of self-diminishing and self-incrimination. Now, this is actually because when we can do it for ourselves, only then can we do it for others. I think that I also had talked to you about my, I'm going to go ahead and say it, my original teacher used to only give me two choices when I was practicing. I was a very ambitious, hardworking student. And he would always say to me, either you're cheating, or he would say, you're showing off. And those were my only two choices. Stop cheating, you're showing off, you're cheating, you're showing off. And like I say, those were my only two choices. And so I definitely did feel pretty judged. And so it's something that when I'm, I am teacher of teachers and I'm teaching them not to judge the students at all. It's just one of those things, you never know what people are dealing with. And how could we, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but how could we possibly judge knowing only the iota of information about them that presents? So anyway, how can we learn to love ourselves, and how can we learn not to judge ourselves when we're being judged by the very teacher, right? So how did I learn it? Through asana.
Is he judging? But I'm just curious, is he judging you, or is he challenging your ego? I mean, or is it the same thing? I mean, not to get too off the tangent, but maybe he was just trying to, keep you in check.
In all fairness, I have to say it was, because I have not seen my beloved teacher for nearly two decades or something like that. And I learned the most important lessons from him in that way. And so let's honor that for sure. I'm gonna go ahead and say that I was feeling pretty judged. I was just working
Okay.
really hard. Yeah. And I was feeling pretty judged. And it's actually kind of what it pointed me in a direction that I went as a teacher. I learned a lot. Um, these types of teachers made me the teacher that I am. And that's what we're going to get a lot more into with a lot more specificity. So just reeling it back in again, that is the way that I learned this through asana, is by learning to look myself straight in my own eyes without even blinking, and to learn to love myself exactly as I am, accept myself exactly as I am, not judge myself, so that I can love and accept others and not judge others. We can't do it for someone else if we can't do it for ourselves. And so that right there is item number one anyway. But the second step was, remember, the body is a learning device for the mind, and we're meant to learn it on the mat to use it in the life. And as my yoga journey went, I definitely went deep into asana, but I also went deep into things like pranayama, and also the fourth spiritual study, self-study. And that's where I started to really put together some of the ideas that I'm going to talk to you about today. So through spiritual study and self-study, not only through asana, it kind of expanded my purview on how to serve on a higher level. And now the conversation has become how to, just as in asana, I am teacher of teachers, now the conversation is how to support people who want to serve on a higher level. So that's what we're doing here. Clear. Okay.
Right.
So
No, I'm very happy.
yeah, remember, in the case of this student that prompted this conversation, is that what she was desperately craving was that spiritual study and self-study. And I saw myself in that because I got deep into the inner world. I think we talked about that a lot in the first interview. And so the realization that what she was saying to me, through no longer being as fulfilled with only teaching postures and wanting more silence and wanting more introspection and inner space, inner world study, she was indicating to me that she's ready for cultivation on the deeper level so that she can serve on a deeper level. So now we've already touched on what's required in order to be able to do that. So the first thing that we've already talked about is you yourself as a space holder, as a facilitator for transformation, need to be deeply grounded and connected to the truth of who you are in its highest form. Um, not not in a
How do we know the truth of who we are, though? That, I mean, can we start there in a way? When you say that, yeah, I know myself on one level, and how do I know I'm at the truth of who I am? How do we, when we reach that place?
I think it might be something like this. And I hadn't anticipated the question. So I'm really
Right.
feeling the answer. I hope I can really articulate exactly the way I'm seeing it. And that is that we basically take off this mask, right, of who we think we are. Oh, I'm Kim and I'm teaching yoga, and, you know, you put that down and you connect to yourself as simply an aspect of the creator, right? With no, you know how they say we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. To not be projecting upon someone, to be standing as the truth of who you are, and connected to your truth coming from love in pure time. These are all things that I am going to talk about in detail. So we'll let it kind of
Right.
unroll like that. So when
Okay,
you're
good.
right there, now pure time present moment is everything. And I do mean everything. So when you are standing in your authenticity, connecting as your highest self, there is no time. There is no history. There is no history to hold against someone. There is no projecting of who you think you are. You simply are as a state of being in a field of trust with no judgment, coming from love, and availing yourself on all of these levels. So, oh yeah, God, listen to this. So in yoga, we would say, can you give yourself your undivided attention? And we talked about how most people, first of all, definitely don't give themselves their undivided attention, but nor are they really availing themselves on all the levels in pure time for others as well. So now we're looking at listing, naming, qualifying ways that you can serve on a higher level. And by the way, I have to tell you this, I'm going to talk about it as far as being a yoga teacher, but this is by no means limited to your profession, your occupation. How you serve is who you are. How you serve is who you are. How you serve is a state of being in its purest form. And so this is for anyone and everyone, no matter what you do for a living, no matter your capacity of, how you get your money, or anything like that. And by the way, it's not limited to office hours. This is like who you are as a state of being is how you serve. So it's anytime, all the time, every time, whether you're on the clock or not, whether you're getting paid or not, none of these things matter. It's who you are in truth is how you serve. So is that what we call this? Who you are in truth is how you serve?
Well, how we serve is what we called this, but I think that's a better title. Who you are in truth is how you serve. That makes more sense to me because it's yoga really is about getting to the truth of who you are. I mean, the big branches of yoga. Who we are is not our story and our labels and we
Yes.
do who we are. But that's a deep concept. Who we are is how we serve. Can you go deeper into that a little
Yeah,
bit?
let's do it. So I I want to stay on this, and then I'll come back to some notes so we don't lose this thought. Okay, so here we are. And how about this? I want to tell you a story. And then we'll come back to that kind of bullet point list and refer back to the story when it makes more sense, when it becomes more relevant.
Yes.
So I want to tell you that I used to own a studio, and that was, what I did on the daily for sure, and labor of love. And when I sold the studio, I started traveling the world. I started teaching internationally. And so now I was in a situation where I was traveling to studios where obviously the studio owner and some teachers and maybe some students who follow my social media know me or know of me. But the majority of people attending these events don't know me, don't know anything about me, who I am, what I'm about, nothing. They think they're just coming to, a posture clinic. So what I started noticing, and I would always say that my events are what I'm going to call energetic events. And by the way, for all of these things that we're discussing right now in the way of how we serve, and this is really important. So I was at a studio, it happened to be in New York, and I did this posture clinic, and just through some unusual circumstances, the studio owner didn't actually even know I was coming. I was like a guest teacher last minute doing a posture clinic, and there was a teacher who arrived late. She arrived when it was over, and she was like distressed. She was like visibly, noticeably, like really upset that she missed it. And of course, I'm just sitting with her in the lobby, getting to know her, talking with her, feeling into what she was saying to me. And I'm like, well, like, change your clothes, let's go back in. And she's like, really? I'm like, I'm here, let's do it. And so in the time that we had made the decision to go back into the room, the studio owner actually arrived and found out I was there and found out we're going back in the room. So she wanted to jump in on it, and it was incredible. So we go into the room, and there's a posture that this teacher was having specific trouble with in her own body, in her own practice. And so that was the posture that we started looking at. It happens to be Trikonasana triangle pose. And that is, among other things, it's a spine twist. But in this case, it's a deep hip opener. And, as humans, we tend to stash a lot of pain, and actually a certain type of pain in the hips. And so that's what we were getting to. Because remember, I told you, in our previous conversations, I teach you on every level of your being. It's not just about the posture. So what I'm addressing her on is a level of thoughts and beliefs and feelings and emotions, and trying to help her free herself from the pain that she has stashed in her hips. So we had already had this time talking in the lobby. Now, this is an important story, like super important. We had already had this time talking in the lobby and really just connecting and knowing each other. And then we go into the room. And although kind of my crew and the studio owner are now there, and they're, just doing their own thing, maybe 10 feet away or something, and I'm working with her on this posture, and we're having a level of trust, I want to say, in the form of an intimate conversation about the body and the practice and the life history and all of these things. So I get her in a position, I support her in this way, I ask her to do this, I intend that for her, with her, through her. And not only does she actually, for the first time, sit in this posture, it's a bit of a lunge, a side lunge. Not only does she sit, but she creates a little space and opens the hip, and she has this big flood of release and relief and emotions, and she just starts like crying. And by the way, do you remember the first time you and I talked, and I told you about crying during camel, and it was forgiveness? Remember that story of forgiveness that we talked about? So now I have, now I had it for, go
Your
ahead.
mother, right? No, it was for your mother, that
Yeah,
story. It was about forgiveness of your mother. Right, right, right. I remember that.
forgiveness of my
So
mother.
now, so I mean, just a brief aside. So people store these heavy, heavy emotions and feelings deep in their body. So one way not to feel them is to store them, but they're always there until you release them. And that's what one of the things that yoga, you're saying, frees us some. So go ahead, tell us what happened.
Yes and no, under the right conditions. And that is what we are about to talk about, like, exactly. So listen to this. So she is able to actually sit all the way down, get a little space in the joint, and open it up, and these feelings just come flooding out. And that right there, that is a sacred moment. That right there, that is yoga. But the story that I want to tell you is that I debated, whether to tell this or not, but I have to, for people to be able to understand. The studio owner in that case actually saw what was happening from a distance, and with her own body language, with her hand on her hip and her weight shifted to one side, she said, I tell her that all the time. And it was a little bit like, why'd she cry for you? And I had this massive realization that I am going to share with you right now. Because I was, by the way, I was having this experience. Like I started to tell you that I was traveling the world. I was going to all these studios where no one knew me. I had all these students. I didn't have a, I didn't have a history with them. They didn't know me. But I was having all of these kind of extraordinary situations where people were receiving the relief that they have been like desperately hoping for, waiting for, wanting, ready for, but not knowing how. It's that story of the camel again. And so what came to me is the way to actually articulate exactly, and I do mean exactly how. And I want you to remember again that I'm not talking about serving in a way that is limited to teaching yoga, but I am using that as my example because that's of course my capacity. So what we had created, not just through sitting in the lobby, where within just a few minutes of conversation, she can see herself in me. And then we go into the room and there's what I'm going to call field of trust with no judgment. Oh my God. Remember a couple of minutes ago, I said to you that we're meant to look straight into our own eyes and learn to love ourselves exactly as we are and not to judge ourselves, and that we can only do it for others if we can do it for ourselves. Now, and yeah. Remember I told you I had a teacher and I always felt like a little judged by my teacher. Okay, so right. And then I told you that this studio owner was a little like, why didn't I've told her that before, that type of thing, right? She was feeling judged. She did not trust that she could have that release and therefore transformation in that space under those circumstances. So what became apparent to me, if you write down anything from this talk, the way to facilitate transformation, and with all the caveats that I am not the doer. It's not about me, it's about humanity. In a field of trust to create a field of trust with no judgment, because people cannot, will not bear their pain, let it come up to get it out. I always say, got to get it up to get it out, got to go through it to get to it, but that's like serious. I know that from my own life, right? People will not share their vulnerability if they feel judged. People cannot release the heavy load that they carry unless they trust you and don't fear judgment. They're already judging themselves so very harshly. The last thing they need is to feel judged by someone else.
Right.
And so not only that, creating field of trust with no judgment, but doing it in a state of pure time. You and I are right here, right now. And this is all there is. There is no history. There's no projection of what has not happened yet, which is imagination, the future. So, and availing yourself in pure time on every level that you exist, availing yourself in the level of consciousness where all things are possible, even and especially the things that you had not yet considered, availing yourself on the level of feelings. Oh gosh, that's going to be really important. Coming from love, coming from gratitude, coming from, okay, now this is going to be super important to what you brought in earlier. You said, how do you know if you're aligned to your true self? I think I have to tell this story now. Oh my gosh. This is a good one. We might need two parts for this conversation as well.
That's fine. I appreciate your enthusiasm and how dedicated you are to this work and how you give your total self in working with people and also then sharing what you've learned from working with people. So I think, it's great to go deep into this. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, you and I now we're working together more and understanding, that we love like going all the way down that rabbit hole and no like just brushing the surface, like let's do this, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. One time, when I was a really young woman, I used to sell real estate. I was a real estate broker, and I went to this house. I was taking a listing on a house, and the woman was selling the house because the love of her life had tragically, suddenly, unexpectedly died. She happened to be something like a psychotherapist, and she was grieving her own loss. She was horrifically grieving the loss of this man that she had planned a life with. So she was selling the house and I was taking the listing. And she started to tell me why she was selling the house. And she started to tell me about him. And while she was telling me about him, I could feel her just like accessing just the deepest despair in her gut. And she started crying. And I started crying with her. And she immediately recoiled and actually admonished me. It shocked me. I felt like I was being like scolded or reprimanded for sympathizing with her. And I will never, ever, ever forget that moment because definitely to this day, it is one of the keys here that is going to be really important. And
Well,
that
you
is,
were feeling off. I mean, it's just natural. She was telling you an emotional story. You were feeling. It's nothing. Anyway, it happened. Whatever happened, but I think you were being very authentic at that moment. You were expressing your feelings too. So yeah.
I definitely was. She felt so much sadness. It made me feel so sad. She cried. I cried with her. And then she was just so shocked by it. And she said, don't you know that one of kind of like the cardinal rules for holding space for someone is that you remain grounded, connected, strong, so that
I
they.
don't believe that. There's no cardinal rules for holding space. It's whatever it is that allows one to. Other people would have really appreciated that. So it's that woman's hang up.
I
What you're
agree with
telling me.
well, I agree with what you say, but there's a valid point there that I learned from a lot. So vibrationally, which we haven't actually had those conversations yet, and let's stick to today's subject today. But
Okay.
vibrationally, each feeling has its own vibration, right? And what happens is if someone is crying and you cry with them and they're sad and you're sad with them, what you've done is you've joined them in that vibration. We call it commiseration. And it's a way as humanity that we show care. It's a way that we show concern. But we can do even better to facilitate transformation by being what I'm going to call a space holder for someone. Because, okay, yeah, this is wow. Wow. Now listen, you know what I would call Reiki? If I were to, I actually have kind of written my own formula. This is a kind of a direct quote, and I use it. I state the quote, and sometimes I state the opposite of the quote so that you can learn the wisdom behind it. So for this, here's what I want to do. I want to ask you, and maybe you and I have done this before, but I'm going to take it to a deeper level. And this is all happening.
Okay.
So I want to say just out of order, but in the most organic way. So I'm just going to let it run. Um,
Okay.
Look at me with your eyes and
Mhm.
just look, it's, you don't look at the camera. Just look at my eyes. I'm looking at yours right now for
Okay.
sure. And I want you to don't just evaluate this with your analytical mind. I want you to be in this space with me and feel what I'm saying to you. So when I see you, I want to put you in like, let's spotlight you. Can I spotlight you? Will you spotlight
Yeah.
you? Okay.
Let me see if I can do that.
Like spotlight
On
yourself.
the screen here. Um, I think I can do that. Let me see. I don't know. I think
You don't.
when I talk, you spotlighted. So go ahead.
Okay.
Wait, let me unpin you. Maybe that will work. I don't know. With two people, it's hard to. Okay,
Yeah, it doesn't
let's do
matter.
it. Yeah.
They'll benefit from both. Anyone listening is going to benefit from both. But I'm not actually doing this for the viewer as much as I am for a moment. right here, right now, to talk on, to expand upon that point with some more clarity. So when I see you, just be with me here in the eyes.
I'm with you.
So when I see you as love. And when you see me seeing you as love.
Right. Then there is love.
When
Then I'm feeling the
well,
love. Go ahead.
yeah, listen now. When you see me seeing you as love, now you can see yourself as love. And when you can see yourself as love, now you can see me as love.
Well, when you see me as love, I feel the love. And it's not so much me seeing me as love, is that there's love present. So that's what I sense. It's not a me or a you, it's the presence of this. So I don't, in a way, even identify self, because then I'm separating from you.
Now,
When
Alan,
you're saying see, there's love. That's how I feel.
feel this by comparison, because I'm going to say that part of the human condition is that we are self-condemning by nature of the mind. We talked a lot about that incessant chatter, the monkey mind, right? We're self-condemning, we're critical, we hold things, maybe an event happened one time in our life and we continue to hold it against ourselves for the duration of the lifetime, over and over and over. There's a lot going on there. And what people will do is quite literally tell you in various forms how worthless they are, how unlovable they are, how unworthy they are. And the problem is when we believe them. And now believing them comes in the form of, how about this? Remember, yeah, God, remember a second ago I said to you, like, I am not the doer, mean like we are not the doer, right? Connecting to the highest self is connecting to the aspect of the creator and aligning, here it is, aligning on the level of the small self, the egoic identification of self as separate, aligning our free will to the purpose of the true self in service. In other words, that's how we become just a vacant or a vessel or a vehicle. So now what I want to do with you is the opposite. So listen, let's imagine for a moment that there's something that happened in your life and you're holding it against yourself. So
Okay.
in projecting it into the life to create, the manifestation of your life, you feel unworthy for whatever reason, you feel unlovable for whatever reason, you feel ashamed for whatever reason, and then you tell me about the shame. And if I have any judgment in me whatsoever, any agreement in the way of, yes, in fact, you are unworthy, yes, in fact, you need to redeem yourself, you are unlovable, now let's try this on for size. So when I see you, let's say, for example, that you had said to me that you are damaged or you're broken, or I could sense that that's the way that you feel about yourself. We talked about your relationship with yourself in the context of your life. Let's say that you kind of feel like you're broken or you kind of feel like you're damaged. And I'm like, yeah, she's a little broken. She's a little damaged, right? No, because listen to this. When I see you as broken and damaged. And when you see me seeing you as broken and damaged. And when you see yourself as broken and damaged, in that defensive reaction, you see me as broken and damaged. And when you see me as broken and damaged, it's just, you understand the way that these things reflect and play.
Right.
So
So you're saying you heal that by seeing that person in their perfection, right?
the truth of who they are. When you are connected to your truth, coming from love as the truth of who you are in a field of trust, with no judgment, in pure time, on every level of being, and you avail yourself on all of those levels with love, and see them as truth and don't believe that they're broken, even when they tell you and try to convince you that they are, and see them as an aspect of the creator who's chosen some lessons, having an experience. And you can still hold that space and love them and not believe that they're broken and not believe that they're damaged, even when they're trying to convince you and prove that they are, then you are.
Right.
That's what I'm going to call Reiki. That's what I'm going to call energy healing. It's like an energy that you can actually infuse
So,
into the auric field should they choose to respond to it.
so when you're teaching yoga or whatever you're teaching, you see people as the perfection of themselves, which help them achieve that inner space because there's no judgment in who you're seeing them as, and that gives a sort of energetic um, upliftment to that person because, yeah, yeah,
It's a
I
space
get
that they can then step into when they can see themselves as worthy, when they can see themselves as lovable, and all of those things. It's just the same concept. It's in the simplest terms, it's the same concept as in the airplane. You put on your own oxygen mask before you hand it
right.
to someone else, or in the well. You don't jump in the
Mhm.
well to save someone, right? You stay outside of the well to help them out. This is no different energetically.
But you could not have done this practice, which is a sort of practice, unless you had that judgment on yourself, seen yourself as broken and damaged, have healed those deep places, because then you could look at people, feel that what they're feeling, and use use your own life as a practice to help, the way you freed yourself from those old emotional asanas. You're helping to free up people. Yes.
Yes, I think that the kind of the thought I keep having in the backtrack is that word perfect. When we see everybody in their perfection, that's a tricky one for people to wrap their head around. And I would maybe even change the word perfection
I
to
think, wait, before you, wait, I just want to absorb that one. I think a great practice would be to be out on the street or the subway or wherever you are, just see everyone as perfect. Just see them as, and that really helps people whether they know it or not. Because when you're judging people, it actually hurts. It hurts to be judged. I think it hurts to judge. I mean, it's such a habit, but it actually energetically hurts you and them. So I think this is a good practice. This is good. So yes, what were you going to say?
oh, you just made me want to say 1,000 different things. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Yes, to what you said, I agree. But what I think is that we are vibrational beings in a vibrational world, and there is pinpoint precision in the universe. Everything can only be the indication of what is active within, and or combined with what I'm going to call a precognitive agreement, which is what your soul came here to learn, and the collective agreements that we ascribe to, and the thought identification of who we think we are, and all these things create our reality, right? So to actually put aside judgment and know that somebody has a divine inform, let's say, has a precognitive agreement, something that their soul came here to learn. If you believe in karma, maybe you think they still have some unfinished business. If you believe in manifestation, you can see everything around them as the reflection of what's within them. When you look at all these combined things, how can you do anything other than shake your head at how extraordinary and precise the universe really is? And so I will tell you with all certainty, there's a lot of what I'm going to call spiritual accountability for that type of belief on that level. There's just no question about that. And
Right.
so you're never standing in a place of righteousness. You're always and only standing in a place of pure time present love, and love of the creator, as we all are, right? As it expresses in the form of this person with this life and these circumstances and so on and so on. But knowing
Well, I just
that,
want to read something. No, I just want to read you something that someone in the live chat said that I saw. I feel the frequency of love and compassion from both speakers. It's such a great discussion. discussion. Well, that's nice that it's being transmitted.
Thank you. May I know, I can't see the chat, and so may I know
Oh,
the
first,
commentary?
that's Sol Castillo says that in the
Soul
live
is
chat.
SOL.
Paul is his name.
Thank you, Saul.
Yes.
Thank you.
And he also says projecting the judgmental vibrations to others inevitably will hurt us because we are very much connected. So thank you for that chat.
So can I tell you that, and I hope I'm saying Saul's name right. Saul, can you just give me a confirmation?
Saul.
Saul, okay. So can I tell you that Saul just redirected this conversation? This is definitely what I want to bring in now, and this is just in confirmation for and with Saul. So you just said, Alan, that really when we judge people, it hurts them to judge them. And now that makes me want to include the subject of ahimsa in this conversation, because the way that I hope that I finished the story about the triangle pose and the teacher who needed the release, but she couldn't get it because she didn't feel safe in a field of trust. She was in the absence of trust in a field of judgment, because now you say judgment hurts, and we're expanding upon everything that we've already talked about so far. So here's the thing about ahimsa. I know that we know ahimsa means do no harm. And we know that, that brings into things like do not kill, do not steal, things like that. But I want to tell you that there are far subtler levels of ahimsa that I really ascribe to. And it comes to what I'm going to call agreements in relationships that are mostly unspoken. And so this is in the subject of ahimsa. And remember, the big topic here is how we serve on a higher level. And it has nothing to do with whether or not you are a yoga teacher. So don't miss the big picture concept here. This is really important. We tend to have agreements, unspoken agreements in our relationships that are in violation of ahimsa without even knowing it, being aware of it. So for example, and this, by the way, is field of trust with no judgment. And this, by the way, is continuing to hold space to facilitate transformation. Like this is everything. So let's say, for example, that I have a student who comes to me and she's got a lot of distress in her life. And she tells me that in her relationships, this person said this person did this person, this person, this person, this person. And what happens in a normal, in a typical interaction, in a typical relationship, is that your way of showing your love for this person that has come to you is to, how can I say this, is to hold against that person that has harmed her, to hold that against them on her behalf, to hold that against them for her. Do you see what I mean? So she might say, oh, this person doesn't respect me, violated me, did this, said this, hurt me in this way.
This person did this to me. Yes, the
And
victim.
then I decide that's a bad guy. And not only do I now judge and perceive this person and hold them in that space as, oh, that's a bad person, and I'm going to hold it against them, but I'm even likely to tell other people this thing that I heard, that that's a bad person, so that they then will hold it against him. And this is a common thing. This is as simple as gossip. This is as simple as judgment, and it is harmful. It is a violation of his.
But there are not bad people. There are people you want to stay away from. I mean, yes, maybe you don't have to job, but maybe no one's ultimately bad. But there are people that someone's just trying to tell you and help you through love to say, hey, don't get involved or whatever. But yeah, it gets to be more than that, I think you're
I
saying.
agree with you completely. And yes, it gets to be much, much more than that for a number of reasons. And you know how we were just talking about you have to hold space in a field of trust with no judgment in order to facilitate transformation. So and I want to tell you that what we've been talking about, because now we're getting into some big pictures of higher spiritual concepts, and there's a lot of accountability and responsibility for your own manifestations as a vibrational being in this type of conversation. But let's do this for Saul. And so here's what it is. We've already talked about forgiveness, And we've already also talked about what I'm going to call, what I see is that everything in your life is your relationship with yourself in the context of it. So if I'm hearing my friend speak, rather than suddenly the story is about him and he did this and he said this and, blah, blah, I'm right there with her, remember, on all the levels in pure time, field of trust with no judgment, only seeing her as the indication of what's active within her relationship with herself in the context of being, and then you can fill in all of the blanks. Her relationship with herself in the context of working that job, being that daughter, being a mother, being a wife, being a woman, being a sister, being a friend, whatever it is, your relationship with yourself in the context of that relationship, because that relationship is unique. It has its own vibrational blend. And so not only can you help her best by not, you know how they say, like, don't confuse the issues with the facts. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you that when people are talking to me, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, not only do I not need to know any details, I almost don't want to know any details. The details are irrelevant. The details of circumstances can be very irrelevant on that high level of your relationship with yourself in the context of your life. So now, not only am I helping her get straight to the source of maybe some of her manifestations on the causal level of thoughts and beliefs, why would that be okay with her to begin with? But I'm also, by not holding something against someone else on her behalf, I'm now actually holding space for somebody else to step into their highest selves as well. And that's huge. What do you want to say about that? Because I wanted to kind of get to some of these little notes I made on our
No,
tangents.
no, I think it, but just reflect on if someone tells you about somebody who does something bad or wrong, how do you stay not in judgment, hold them in a space, yet take a warning, let's say, about, or do you not pay attention because, in a way, everyone has their own relationship with someone, and you really can't go by someone else's, someone they've said something about me or you, don't go into that and then I like say, oh no, that person's great. So there's just two ways of being like that. It's your own truth or someone else trying to, and both can be true at some point or not. So I'm just curious, how do you hold people without judgment, I guess is the question, really.
Remember when I talk about it's not about the posture is the tool we use to get there and the indication that we have, and it's not about gymnastics. When we were talking about doing yoga in the form of asana postures, this would be maybe an analogy, because what I said to you is when I'm teaching you yoga, I'm teaching you on every level that you exist. The level of thoughts and beliefs, the level of feelings and emotions that are in response to the thoughts and beliefs, and then the level of form. And yes to everything you said, but if you are of the belief that we are vibrational beings in a vibrational world, then you understand that these things that occur in the life are less on the level of form and less on the level of action. And they're more the indication of the inner climate. And that is the way I address it. It's really just kind of unearthing what thoughts and beliefs do you hold to be true about yourself that would call this into agreement. What did you come to learn, and how does that pattern present itself over and over and over? Different faces, different events and circumstances, but the same indication of what's active within you, whether it's something like, and oh God, oh my God, like an inner conflict that is presenting as self-sabotage in your life over and over and over. So while all those circumstances might seem so different and unique, they're all kind of the same core belief that you hold about yourself. So when you're really helping someone on the unseen levels, then you can actually resolve it. Because if it's no longer active within you, then it will stop showing up in your life, right?
Wait. Just talk about that point again, helping someone on unseen levels. Just expand upon that because I think you're onto something. to something else?
I think it's something like this. Um, we've talked about forgiveness. We've talked about loving yourself and standing in your value, connecting to truth, and all of these things. And when we do it for ourselves, we can hold that space for others. And that is this aspect of the conversation that we're having right now. And I think that, you know what I want to do? I want to actually quote someone who gave me some good advice. Good advice, like really good advice. And he said to me, please, he said, make every single decision in your life, no matter how big or small, like what you're eating for breakfast or who you spend your life with. Make that decision as if you loved yourself deeply and completely. Now, most of the things that light up in the life, most of the things that feel bad, regardless of the circumstances, are only the indication that you're either feeling, unlovable, unworthy, you don't love yourself, you hate yourself, something you're holding against yourself. All of these types of things present, even though the faces vary and the circumstances vary and they seem completely unrelated, typically they're the same thing. It's a pattern that produces over and over, and it's something that once you actually learn it and feel whole and complete in that lesson, then likely it will resolve and it would no longer be okay with you and won't show up in your life. Again, it's a level of spiritual accountability for sure to get in there and do the inner work, which is what we've talked about in every conversation we have. It's about the inner work and the inner journey, and recognizing, by the way, that you have always been worthy, not because you have to earn it, not because you have to prove it. You are worthy by your divine birthright. You have always been. You even were in that moment when something occurred in your life that you've held against yourself ever since. You are now, and you always will be. So that type of realization and recognition.
I think that's in a way the best thing you've said so far throughout the whole conversation, in a sense, because only because that is the rock bottom truth, that our divine birthright is the emanations of the perfection that we are, that we don't have to judge ourselves for. And so I'm just saying that's the bottom line, in a sense. When you reinforce, we are present here as a divine right, all of us, everyone, the rich and the poor, whatever else you may call yourself as a label, it's the emanations of the divine birthright gives us permission to love ourselves and to honor ourselves and to see ourselves as perfect in that way you're speaking. Yes.
And
So
when we
thank
do
you.
it for ourselves, then we can do it for others as well. Yeah.
Well, that's the part that maybe I'm having a little trouble with. I mean, in a sense, okay, because I'm just getting the fact that yes, okay, my divine birthright, yours, is to acknowledge that it is, and then when I embody the divine birthright, I'm just feeling into that whole thing. Then okay, I see your incarnation as divine birthright. How could it not be? How could it be anything else?
That's all you can see. You couldn't see it any other way.
Right,
You
right.
wouldn't want
And
to, right?
everybody on the street, everyone you pass, everyone. But it's not just people that are divine birthrights, your animals, your vegetable garden, your any form of incarnational life in form, then it's all, even the house you're living in a sense, is the divine birthright of being. I mean, how far do you want to take it? I mean, you could take it ultimately. So, yes, that's ahimsa. When you honor that divine birthright, then you're really practicing ahimsa.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to bring in that element of pure time again, because it seems really relevant right now that I don't see that we should be trying to go back as a species, literally, that we should try to be going back to what is known by us, what we have been. I think that we need to be creating what will be. And we need to do that not by projecting history into the future, but by recreating. And remember, the topic of today
I would
is
say, wait, I just want to say to support that is like the best creation is creating the unknown. This is what creation is. This I'm writing about this. The artist or teacher, it's making on the unknown is the birthright of the divine incarnation. And that's part of the purpose of being here is to create more of what we have yet to know. We're moving in to the future because it is unknown. So yes, this is where we're going.
so
Yes.
what does this look like? Because look at this. Here's the vision that you're giving me is this. Look at what we've already talked about so far and what you just said. And there were some things that you said earlier when you pointed out some contrasts, and you said things like impoverished versus wealthy, or, sick versus well. And, we kind of point out all the contrasts and the polarity that exists in the world. And we tend to judge each other depending on, what looks like it's not relatable to us, or something like that. Now,
Right.
there is a thing that you say we're trying to step into what we don't know, but we could say exactly what you said by stepping into what we do know to be true, which is that all of us, every single divine in form, is an aspect of the creator, and therefore is perfect by divine birthright. And if we no longer are looking at somebody and judging them, qualifying based on these structures created in fear about your time, the value of your time is related to your value as a human. And if we just kind of let go of these collective agreements and look at any single person and every single person into their eyes and say, when I see you as love. And when I see you as
Right.
love, you see me seeing you as love. And now we're valuing every single human life, not based on these divisions that we've drawn with what they do for a living, or where they live, or their culture, or their religion, or birth order, or income, or the ways that we simply divide, the ways that we simply
So I
divide.
just want to take that a little further in the sense, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. When you step into what you know as being, it creates the space for something to unfold that hasn't existed before.
That,
So this is evolution.
that's the way we change. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
way we.
it's the way change happens on all levels is holding the truth of what you are without the past, without a future, but it's like one step at a time unfolds as you put your foot down, stone appears, because that is the truth of who we are, the ongoing forever of all that is. It keeps creating. Creation just didn't happen. It's happening each moment as the divine incarnation
And
of it.
we'll have to specify creating from love, right? Because creation is always going on, but what we're talking about is being deliberate about creating from love. Yeah.
Well,
So
isn't all creation from love? I mean, yeah, you can create from fear, which
yeah.
is about the known.
Mhm.
But when you create out of the unknown, I think this is just me, you have to be in the presence of love because that's what propels you forward. If you're creating from fear, you're moving backwards. So
Which is
thank you.
exactly what we've been talking about the whole time. Sometimes people are in need of someone holding that space for them. They have so much fear, and they need to be in that field of trust with no judgment, coming from love in pure time on all the levels, to be able to release the fear and to be able to have the courage to not just live the future based in history, but to actually allow themselves to grow and express their life on all the levels, um, in a greater capacity, something like that. This is really important. It's because I feel like we just, I feel like what just happened is not only are we talking about we, you, me, how we serve, how that service facilitates others in service. Because I think that now we've kind of come full circle. We're starting and we've come back around to it. There are people that are ready to serve on a higher level and they simply don't know how. And so, and again, remember, they don't even realize, maybe they do and don't realize that that's what they're experiencing in their life. What used to satisfy me no longer does. I want more, and what I want is to be alone and get in my inner world. And all of this to me is kind of indication of readiness in any and all of its forms. And then when they are ready and they forgive, the three levels of forgiveness, they forgive offenses that they have perceived, they forgive themselves for maybe ever believing that it was true. And then the biggest picture, to realize there never was anything to forgive, and to come to love and to be a light. Then they know how, and they feel confident. Just listen to this. They feel confident just being themselves in its highest form, and come to the realization that that is how they serve. So it's not even necessarily like you don't need to get a degree or take a course. It's more like that is the inner journey, is the resonance and the state of being that you become in service to others. Yeah, yes to that.
So, but wait, let me just serving on a higher level. No, I just want to recap what you're saying, so I can absorb it and see where. So people serve when they be the love that they are. But are you saying there's a higher level to that, or is that the highest level, or is there always another level? I'm not sure
I
what
mean,
you're saying.
I guess it's a question. Like, if there were levels there, it would be on how can you be what I'm going to call dominant frequency? How can you lift a field to a higher octave? So that would be a way of leveling. Like, are you able to simply remain aligned when the external world is completely chaotic? Uh, just that alone would be a level, but a higher level would be to be able to do it in a group setting. And then a higher level would be to be able to hold that space for literally, humanity. I mean, there is only one. There is only one doing.
Right.
Yeah.
There is. So, do you feel though there are other levels you can achieve as you go deeper into yourself? I mean, because we're always moving towards something. Do we ever arrive, is what I'm saying to you? Do you feel?
I think that each and every moment is the arrival when you are embodied, when you are fully integrated. I have come right now. I have come. I have come. I have come. I am arrived. I am here. I am here. I am here. That is the journey, is the presence on all of the levels of being. And I mean, now you're making me think of things like, yeah, there's, further, there are ways to further increase your consciousness, and there are many other dimensions other than the ones that we are limited to through our senses, but I think that's a different conversation. But yeah,
Right.
we can get
To
more.
serve on a higher level, um, what would the practice be that, because you've given us some clues here, but what would you have people remind themselves of to know their love? That's always a great one. To see the others as love and divine. Is there something more that we can practice? Or maybe that's a lot right there, but what do you say?
That's, right there is, probably a couple hundred incarnations. But I mean, it's just one of those easier said than done. But that is what all the practices are, Alan. That is what a asana practice is. It is what a meditation practice is. It is what a mantra practice is. It is what all those things are, to connect you to the truth of who you are, so that you can then embody and hold space for others to do the same. So there are any and every practice you can do. Any mindful moment is a meditation. Anything connecting you to your breath. And so we should have future conversations about like the chakra. Oh, let's like, so I already made some really small mention of
No,
what I
no,
call.
but before we get there, I just want to, I mean, that's good. Hold that point. But I just want to say, to relate this all back to yoga, if you're doing a practice or something and you can only, let's say, stretch so far, that's the truth of who that person is.
No, it's not.
And that's perfect, isn't it? I mean, why do they need to stretch more if that's all
Yeah,
they're stretching?
that's
I
the more
mean,
relevant question. But remember, okay, so now we'll circle back around. The body's a learning device for the mind. So your value as a human is not based on how far you can stretch.
no, I know, but that's
Yeah.
the
So
truth of who they are as stretching.
getting a little bit into this conversation I like to have that I call messages from the body, which is nearly what we talked about today, but this other thing presented that I was a little more, energized by. So what I want to tell you is whether or not you can touch your toes has nothing to do with you as an aspect of the creator in form. And, we all have chosen a form through which to express. Did I say that right? Um, and but the truth of who you are is not measured by how far you can stretch. As a matter of fact, if you're judging yourself by how far you can or cannot stretch as a measure of the truth of who you are, then then you miss the boat on that one.
Well, let's say you're not judging yourself, but why would you even have to stretch further? What's why? Because the truth of who you are and the perfection of who you are is right there.
Absolutely. Well, our body is our temple, right? Our body is a sacred temple, and the body is a learning device for the mind. And so here's the thing. Do you remember that what I talked about was the consciousness with which you conduct your practice is the same as the consciousness with which you conduct your life. Learn it on the mat, use it in the life. The body is a learning device for the mind. And I taught you how through neuroplasticity and how yoga, asana practice is not spine centric as much as it is mind centric. Right. And so now, of course, we're talking about Ida Pingala, Sushumna, and the chakras again. So it's one big conversation. You actually can change your form through connection to breath, mindful movement with breath, and command. And so remember, it's just about understanding how to use your consciousness to be deliberate about the creation that is your life. And so that early conversation that we had, I used my consciousness to create all those postures. But what I really learned is how to use my consciousness to create. And what I chose to create with it were the postures. And
Right.
you will use your consciousness. You will learn how to use your consciousness to create, but you get to create anything you want. Not everybody has the desire to, touch the toes or, bend over backwards or whatever all the things are. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I get that. No, but go back to the other thing you were just excited about, which was the whole chakra thing that you were tapping into the whole energetics of the chakras, and I think you were.
I think I was actually going to talk about what I'm going to call messages from the body. There was one thing that I thought we were going to talk about today, and just the way that things unfold. I always love how organic and free flowing our conversations are, and especially Saul chiming in so that we got to bring in ahimsa and look at simple things like gossip and the agreements, the unspoken agreements we make in friendships that actually cause harm without us even knowing. So, but one thing that I thought we were going to talk about, and so maybe we'll feel complete after I bring this part in, is that remember when I tell you that I in service as a yoga teacher, um, don't just teach you on the level of the body. I don't just say, okay, touch your toes. Okay, that's yoga, and you can, and so you get an A, and you can't, and so you get a C. Like that. That's not what it is. We are meant to address people on every level of their being. Again, the thoughts and beliefs. Their relationship with themselves, the feelings and emotions in response to the thoughts and beliefs. Now, there was this other topic I love to talk about called messages from the body, which is nearly what we talked about today. And it turns out that there is a belief system that any kind of like disease diagnosis, injury, illness, even habitual tone is an indication from the body as to where your spiritual work lies. And those, again, can also be indicators about what I would call your relationship with yourself in the context of your form. And what I love to look at is that I believe that every single thing that we see we assign a value to. So I see this holds this meaning for me. And in this case, this posture holds that meaning for me. So quite literally in a yoga practice, different postures actually have different meanings to different people. And those are all like their relationship with themselves in the context of that posture. It's a value that they've assigned to that posture. And I think that there are two things I wanted to maybe touch on about this. If I do, I have enough space to at least finish those two examples.
Yes, of course, please. Yes. Yes.
So um, let me tell you first that, I've done a little bit of backbending in my life and I know a thing or two about it.
I
And
think you hold the world, I think the world's record for that, don't you? For backbends?
what I know about backbending is that it can be a very emotional trigger for a whole lot of people. And sometimes, okay, I'm going to say most of the time that trigger is not on the level of the body. It's not like a lacking space between bone joints or a nerve that you're compressing. It's typically emotional, like the story of me crying in camel, like the story of the teacher that I held some space for in a triangle pose. Now what I want to tell you is, first of all, one time I was at one of my seminars, I had a student who was a CrossFitter, and fine, perfect, no issue, no problem. And I couldn't help but notice that he was approaching his yoga practice the way that he approached CrossFit. The practice itself held some kind of aggression and kind of lack of mindfulness or connection. And what I really noticed more than anything is that he absolutely positively was not backward bending during those backward bending postures. And the second he dropped his head back, literally on a physiological level, the second he dropped his head back, he had a panic response and he came out of it as quickly as he went into it. And, what I talk about a lot when it comes to backward bending, I'm going to give two backward bending examples. But when it comes to all backward bending and maybe even all asana, definitely. I was just anticipating what I'm about to say. Look, it's not even about bending your spine backwards. It's about connecting to calm, deep breath while you bend your spine backwards. Because backward bending is an emotional trigger. But if you can breathe there, then you can calm down there. And if you can calm down there, then you can spend time there. And if you can spend time there, then you can do some work there. And if you can do some work there, then I call it, you can get to know yourself in that position and love your life in that position. So I had this extraordinary moment of realization in pure time, field of trust with no judgment with this guy, that what I wanted him to do was not even do the backward bend, like at all, not at all. All I wanted him to do is bring his arms overhead, relax his head back, relax his neck, and just breathe. That's all. And that alone was such a trigger. It took the better part of the weekend to just get to a place where he could just relax his head back. And I would say now just take one breath there, just one. Arms up, head back, in through the nose. Perfect, change. And then eventually 2 breaths, and then eventually 3. And what happened was we just isolated what I'm going to call isolated the trigger, and got to the point where we could actually breathe into the trigger, breathe into the space where the trigger exists, kind of exactly in the moment. Now that alone was kind of extraordinary. It was just a game changer, because remember, you're meant to learn it on the mat so you can do it in your life. So that kind of constant fight or flight, kind of aggressive, not connected to breath or mindfulness, was actually the way he was conducting his life. The consciousness with which you conduct your practice is the same as the consciousness with which you conduct your life. So when I had that realization, it was profound. And then I had that realization of what I call just isolating that trigger when another woman that I had never met before scheduled a session with me, a private session. And, people come to me who either want to be backbenders, and believe me, I've done all of it, not just backbends, but, backbends are a thing. I'm good at teaching what can happen there. And they either want to be a backbender or they used to be and they're not anymore and they're not sure where they're stuck, or backbending hurts, or whatever it is. So this woman scheduled a private session with me and said that she had always been a backbender before, but something happened. She doesn't know what, but now she feels just stuck and wants to, but just can't seem to. And she just doesn't know why. And she's been kind of asking for help and looking for help. And so I thought, okay, I thought to myself, yeah, we just need to isolate that trigger. So I had her inhale after by the way, after talking, after connecting, after, creating that space of field of trust, no judgment. And this was, by the way, virtually, it was online. So energy is tangible. Energy is obviously, you felt it when we just held each other in love, right? So I had her inhale, arms overhead, palms together, interlace, release, and cross, relax her head back, and just take some breaths. And she was fine. And I'm like, because I would say, well, show me your back bend again. And she'd go into it and she'd go, she'd kind of come out quickly. I'm stuck. That hurts. It's scared. And so I just wanted to kind of ease her into just the exact moment. So all I had her do was basically proceed with this exact technique that I use. So I had her create some space and move into the space just millimeter until she was literally at that moment of the trigger, and to actually breathe right there. And actually in that space, under those circumstances of the field of trust with no judgment, in pure time on every level of being, she actually had a recollection that she had been molested as an infant. And that the feeling of having her arms overhead with her front side body open and exposed in such a vulnerable position was triggering and accessing something that she had really deeply embedded. So again, we never know what people are dealing with. Now, I think that there was so not only is every posture is something that you assign a value to, which is another example I'm going to give next, but also we're not addressing a yoga practice just on the level of form. It's not just about the structure of musculoskeletal functional bending your spine backwards, because when you're bending your spine backwards, you're bending your thoughts backwards and your beliefs backwards, and you're bending your feelings backwards and your emotions backwards. You're bending your breath backwards and your nerves, your muscles and your fascia and your tendons and your ligaments and your organs, glands, tissues. You're bending backwards every aspect of your being. So typically when you're stuck, it's not just on the level of the form. Now, look at us in our lives. I have someone who's near and dear to me, who had a pretty significant shoulder injury. And now what I'm talking about is the values that we assign to any given posture. And there's this posture that I taught her. It's called tiger. And it's an inversion, which means you're stacking weight upside down. And in this case, you're stacking your weight on your forearms. And so it's, not a headstand where you're balancing primarily on your head. And it's not a handstand where your arms are extended. It's a forearm balance. And what that requires is a lot of shoulder strength. And more importantly, what that requires is that you trust your ability to carry your own weight. So again, now we're getting into your relationship with yourself in the context of your life and the value that you've assigned to these postures and things like that. And so since she had...
Is that one of the reflections yoga gives you, like where you have problems stretching into symbolizes a kind of thought form, stuckness that carrying your own weight or can't standing or,
which
not
direction to go.
truth. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's like yes, yes, yes. So
yeah, for
so it's a
sure.
reflection. Yoga is that reflection, yes.
Of an inner world. So your
Yeah.
shoulders have a lot to do with carrying the weight of the world on the shoulders, not being comfortable delegating or not trusting that the universe will support you. You know, we have hips that are major decisions in your life, and we have knees that determine the direction. And, you know, we have all of these different body parts that have a lot of different symbolism. And then we have all these postures that call upon those parts, and we challenge ourselves in that way. We're up against ourselves in the form of the posture, right? And so, you know what? I love the way that I don't even need to tell the story anymore. Like, I love the way that that was just wrapped up in such a neat package. But you can see then how that practice on the mat is a lot more than just a, you know, an exercise class. And it doesn't matter whether or not you touch your toes. So
Well,
yes.
you've given people so much, though. I mean, we should continue the conversation with those other points. What was the points you wanted to get to that we haven't gotten to? The chakra awareness, was that part of that? The rest of the conversation?
Oh, it was really just that there were two topics that you and I thought would be the title of today's interview. One was what I call chakra diagnostics, and one was
Right. Yeah.
but in the one that presented
Wait, sorry, I missed the second one. Was chakra diagnostics, and the second one
messages
was
from
what? You faded out.
messages from the body.
Oh, right, right, right. So we got that one, but the chakra diagnostic, we really didn't get to that one.
We really just made a itty bitty teeny tiny mention of each of them under today's big category. Each of those is its own topic, you know. But yeah, we can certainly have future conversations, of course. So listen, what's extraordinary today is that not only can I be in service in my life, but the more people that I can support to be in service in their lives, and then the more people that they can support to be in service in their lives. And it comes from that inner journey of connecting to the truth of who you are and aligning maybe your free will to your soul's highest purpose. Living, not just your profession, not just yoga, living as a field of trust with no judgment, coming from love. And the more you can be in what I call pure time and on every others, who they are as an aspect of the creator and therefore perfect. So holding space for them to be able to see themselves, step into the space to hold space for others. This is how we serve. And I would say that the reason that I wanted to have this talk today is because I feel it. I know that there are, you know, hundreds, thousands, millions of people that want to be in service to humanity and don't know how. And it's you start by being in service to yourself. And then as these things are known by you, you simply are them as embodiment, as integration. And so you simply be it deliberately for others. And that is your service. Your profession does not matter for you to be in service to humanity. It can come from something as simple as loving someone, listening to someone, being present, and not believing them when they tell you that they're unworthy, that they're unlovable, that they should be ashamed or feel guilty, that they shouldn't be who they are, they should be someone else. They shouldn't feel the way they feel, they should feel a different way. When you're able to address yourself on that level, you do it for others. Yeah.
That is a no, just that wrap up there is I hope will sink into people and have them have some inner shift to a greater reality, because um, that's what we all want, is what you're saying: how to serve ourselves for the highest, how to serve others and the planet, you know, how we can all come to be a loving world because we're holding ourselves in the highest space of the divine, which is such a gift of being on this planet, the potential to do that. I mean, that we're here. And everything else doesn't seem as important, does it?
It's our
So
highest.
thank
Yeah, thank you.
it
Thanks
is
for
our highest potential. And I mean, that's a place we can start our next conversation. And no, because that's the place we always have to remind ourselves of, and then go to the more technical stuff, the chakras, and then, mess the body. But it starts from the place of where we incarnate from, and the reasons, and the place of this higher connection, because that's the service to humanity, I guess we can call it, right?
yes.
Thank you. So this is, do you talk about this in your, when you're teaching, or is this something you come to after you're teaching yoga?
It's something that I talk uh, about a lot, but these conversations tend to be in a private one-on-one type of setting
Right.
because they involve a lot of details and a lot of guidance, a roadmap, if you will, of how can you do the work for yourself. And so that would be in the form of a spiritual consult. But maybe that was what was so relevant about today, is that I have these conversations a lot with a lot of details and specifics, but the realization that this need not be a private conversation. As a matter of fact, maybe this is the most important conversation we can have as a species, with collective agreements. And
Absolutely. This is the most important conversation any two people or group could have. I just want to read another few comments. Gosh, just beautiful. Respect. That's Abraham. And Saul, the guy we talked about earlier, says, such impactful, deep realizations occurring while I was listening. I feel even more enlightened. Thank you for your wisdom and insights, Kim and Al. Well, that's nice. That's a way of serving the people who are watching. If they can have realizations the way when you teach yoga, people have realizations about themselves and release. This is how I serve, in a sense. This is making conversations available on this level. So thank you, Kim.
yeah, I honor the way you serve. What you have done is created, your very title, New Realities, is just a massive yes. And you've created a platform that is like a transmitter of very high frequency. And so I definitely honor you and the way that you serve and your creation and your contributions. And I thank you for including me in it.
Oh no, I'm happy to include you because everybody says it differently, but the people I like to showcase are the ones that are saying that deep truth from the level of their own knowing. And then we keep reminding each other of who we really are. So thank
Beautiful.
you.
Thank you.
So, but yes, but if people want to find you and contact you and connect with you, how would they do that?
Okay, I Kim Tang Yoga in every capacity. So kimtangyoga.com is nearly live, and that's a massive platform that's all encompassing. Kim Tang Yoga on Facebook, Kim Tang Yoga on Instagram, Kim Tang Yoga on YouTube, and I like I want to say it, I want to announce it, that I actually will be opening a space where you can come visit me once again. I used to have a studio, I sold it, I've been traveling the world, but I'm creating actually kind of a wellness center slash event center in the Joshua Tree area, in the high desert of Southern California. And so I need a minute on that because it's a big remodel job. But I'm going to tell you that I'm going to create a space that is very, very high vibrational, very, very much aligned with everything that we talked about today. So yes.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Kim Tang Yoga. There she is. Thank you, Kim, for for really serving from your sense of love and peace and compassion and joy.
And thanks Saul also for his contribution, valuable contribution to the conversation, because Saul is the reason we brought in those conversations about unspoken agreements in relationships and how that is ahimsa as well. And so thank you, Saul.
Thank you, everybody who's been watching online and contributing to the chat, and everybody who's been watching New Realities as a platform. So stay tuned for more shows. Thanks again, Kim. Be in touch. I'll talk to you. And I'm just going to end the stream. And this is Alan Steinfield for New Realities. And thanks for tuning in. And keep watching this channel. Subscribe. You can give a super chat to us. And thank you so much. And thank you, Kim.